You may think it's easier to negotiate for others, and you might be right. Stay right here. I am so happy that you made the choice to be here today because this is an important topic. It's important because it's going to inform how you look at other people who are negotiating. And it also gives us a little bit of intel in how we can help ourselves. So, this whole idea of advocating for others, being able to see it from the outside is really true. It's backed by research that we find it easier for us to advocate for somebody else, to get behind their value, to help them say, yes, of course, move forward. Or we say, hell yes, of course, move forward. We can find that language for somebody else. We can give them these words that are really strong. We can help them find the frame that's going to be the best for them to move forward. And sometimes that's unavailable to us, but we can do it for others. And the reason that's true is we don't have a dog in the fight, or we're not going to lose anything. It's not personal. It's harder for us to understand and see our own value. You can see that in our everyday. We often look at ourselves and downplay. We all do downplay what value we have. And we don't celebrate the value we have. We don't think about, oh my gosh, I was really good at presenting in this meeting and I really deserve what I make. How often do you say that to yourself? We don't understand that, but we will easily look over at a colleague or a leader that we admire or respect, and we'll watch them. And if somebody asks them, do they deserve what they make or would they deserve a promotion? We would be like, absolutely, we can see the value that they bring. And so without that value, we look at everything kind of from one angle. When we're on the outside, we can see it from a lot of different dimensions and we don't have emotion involved. That's really the key. When we're advocating for ourselves, there's emotion that sends us down a different track, or it brings additional verbiage into our head that tells us that maybe it's not the right time, or why do you think you're worthy of this? So it's easier for us to advocate for others and be that person. And we can do it even when they don't ask us. We could do this in a lot of different ways. So I wanted to challenge you to really be thinking about and observing for yourself what it feels like to advocate for others as I talk about some of the things you can do and share some stories, and observe how it's so much easier for you to show other people their value, why it's so easy for you to frame and ask for somebody else. Be an observer of that because it's certainly true. And the reason is because we can see it from a side that is like before we're in the negotiation, right? We're not facing the faces. We're not looking at the ask that we're doing. We don't have to do all that. So we can see it from just a really objective view. We can look at it. We're not zoomed in because emotions make us zoom in. We're not zoomed in. It allows us to take a lot of different perspectives and see it from a lot of different angles. And we don't have anything at risk. That's why there's so much power in advocating for somebody else. It gives them some momentum, some courage. So it's important to do. It's such a powerful thing to be aware of because as you go through your day, there are times that you can make a simple investment in somebody around you that could inspire them to have the courage to move forward. People say to me, I feel like I have a little Susie on my shoulder. And I love that. But that's because they need somebody, they want to hear it from somebody else's voice, because when it goes through their head, it's being translated into all these different barriers of decreasing the strength of what they're asking for. So I want you to think about how can you be that little Susie? You can be that person for somebody else, and how can you advocate for them? And when you do that, it builds a muscle. It makes you aware of how you can do it for yourself. So it's such a win-win, to use a negotiation term, to think about this and be really cognizant of it. And as a leader, as a colleague, as a leader, there's so many examples of how we can advocate for others in so many different ways to help get their idea advanced, to help their voice be heard, to pull out some of the great points that they have. Because when we're aware of this idea that we advocate better for others because we see it, we know that it could be a natural tendency that somebody doesn't feel as strong about the value they bring. So we can identify in that moment, listen, how can I add and amplify what you said? How can I just ask a question in the meeting and do something to help you feel elevated so that you can get that voice? That's such a great way as a leader, as a colleague. So I want you to think about this whole idea of we have strength in advocating for others. There's so much to it that you can start doing for others, and it will help you and inspire you to build the muscle for yourself as well. So when I come back, I'll give you some stories to help you apply this and give you some things to really think about, man, you got to stop doing today. I'll be right back. It's me. Thought I'd tell you how excited I am about this collection of courses I have available. It's all around the concept of adopting a negotiator mindset. And the only way to do that is to really understand what it's like to be a negotiator so that you can practice it in your everyday. I'm excited about this project because it's going to allow people to do this on their own time and go through the course at their own pace. If you want to learn more, go to SusieTomanchuk.com. I'd love for you to check it out. So let me talk a little bit about this concept. I'm going to give it from the reverse angle so that you can see the limitation that people have when they negotiate. So a friend of mine is an entrepreneur and she was putting forward a proposal to a new client and she wanted me to look at it. She showed me her math, and her math was her hours times her rate equals what it was. And it was so interesting because there's so many additional factors that go into your experience, into the hour. It's not just an hourly. And so it was fascinating to talk through how I saw it. And even saying to her, what do you think this big company would pay? What value will it bring? And at the end of our conversation, what we found was we believed that through the research that we did, that the client would pay tens of thousands of dollars for the service she was going to provide. And she was going to bid it at a few thousand. And the problem with that is when people get something that's a lot less, they think that the value is less. So we're decreasing our value. And so what we did was I helped her look at it from a lot of different factors, considering her hourly. So instead of her looking at it as a math equation, she was looking at hours plus rate equals this. But when you think about it's not just hours, it's prep time and the things that you'll do after the sessions. It's also the experience that you bring, some of the training that you bring. So all of that should be factored into the value of the product that she has. So she wasn't looking at it from the right perspective. I also was able to pull some market research to see what the value was. We talked about what was the value that the input, the ROI, what would the client get out of it? How could she look at it from their perspective to say, oh my gosh, this is going to affect 50 people. It's going to increase their ability to get things done to this amount of money. And even if it was fictitious, going through some of the ways that they could be looking at this, it allowed her to zoom out. It allowed her to see it from somewhere else, because what happens is when we're in a negotiation, when we're feeling emotional or our value is decreased because we only see it from our side, we limit ourselves. So having somebody from the outside help you color in the picture. It's really literally like thinking about playing poker. The reason that it's so hard to know whether to bet or go higher is you don't know the other people's cards. So even imagining what everybody could hold around the table allows you to get a little bit more confidence about your value. And we often, outside of a poker game, we often are our own worst enemy because we decrease our value. Where I can see her value so black and white. I can say, oh my gosh, you are really good at this. I can see that. So I can be really gregarious for her. Having that outside entity allows that person to expand their view, and you're advocating for them. You're helping them understand their value. I also look at this from, I've been working with a leader. She's a senior leader. She has a huge organization, and she's honestly just conflict avoidant. And so she often doesn't like to delegate. And the reason she doesn't like to delegate, we were talking about it, is because some of the things she delegates, she doesn't like doing, but it's really something at her level she shouldn't be doing. So I would help her by seeing it from a lot of different places. Like as a leader, you need to be playing your position. You need to be playing your level. You need to be always thinking about how you need to see the world, how you need to look at the business, how you need to look out. And some of those things you shouldn't be doing. But she was getting in her way because she was looking at it from her perspective. And it might have been that earlier in her career, when somebody had her do that, it didn't feel good. So there's a lot of factors that get in our way, the math that we do in our head that inhibits us from seeing our position. I helped her advocate for herself by understanding it from a lot of different perspectives. And it was so powerful for her to see that. And the other way I see it happening all the time, I was watching a team look at their strategy for the upcoming year. I work with a lot of organizations that we do this. And so a lot of times I'm just an observer in the room, and everybody was talking and giving these ideas. And there's this one guy, his name is Mark. And through all the conversation, there was this one little piece where he threw out this idea, and he is just not that boisterous, but I realized it was a really good idea. And I just inserted myself and said, "Hey, Mark, can you say that one more time? I want to make sure that I understand this." And so Mark said it again and framed it. And so I got the attention of everybody to think about that. And what it did was it made people click into what he was saying and understanding that was a really good point. It was so good that it really pivoted the whole conversation and made everybody's mindset see different. And what was happening was people were not paying attention. As a leader, as a colleague, it's really important to think about the conversation in the room and how can you advocate for somebody that may not be making their point in a way that they can, that they should, that they could. So I want you to think about all these examples and stop getting in your way. What you need to do is be able to just stop limiting yourself. When you see and hear yourself start to say, well, I'm not going to ask for that. I'm not worthy. I don't have enough experience. Stop. On the second one, when I was talking about the woman that didn't want to delegate something, stop when you hear the voice justify why you don't want to do that. And then the third is stop just moving forward without allowing other people, especially when you have influence, stop just letting that not happen, not seeing it. So be really intentional. So stop allowing these things to get in your way. I'll give you some tips when we get back. Hey, Susie here. Thought I'd pop in. I wanted to let you know I've been an executive coach for over a decade. I work with executives and they call me their silent partner because I help them increase their confidence when they're facing really difficult decisions. If you'd like to see if we're a good fit, head over to susietalmanchuck.com and fill out an application. I'd love to hear from you. I really want to talk about the tips and what you can really think about and start doing, especially thinking about being from the outside and how can you advocate for others, and also being aware when you're diluting your own value. So start being aware of what's high stakes for you and what automatically comes into your head. But also as advocates for others, having situational awareness to help it advocate for others because it's easier. So have courage around that, because when you advocate for others, you understand that value that it has. It helps you to also understand that you have that too. So 3 tips when you're advocating for yourself, when you're asking for something that feels just a little bit outside of what you deserve, or you find yourself immediately when you decide to ask for something else, finding all the excuses why, start getting some support. Get a coach from the outside. It doesn't have to be somebody that is trained in negotiation, but get somebody that can see it from the outside, not necessarily your partner because they have an active role in advocating for you. You want to have somebody that can help you zoom out and see it from a lot of different angles, understand your value. Start doing that so that you can then start bringing that value up. And when you do that, start to recognize and celebrate the value that you bring. Start noticing that around you. When you do a great job on a project, take time to give yourself the accolades that you deserve and recognize your value. That allows you to kind of keep the tank full and understand that. So that's the first one, is really thinking about coaching and getting somebody from the outside to help you see it. And really the second one is understanding that your value is something like a tank of gas, that you have to always be cognizant of making sure it's higher. The higher, I don't want you being overconfident or cocky about it. I see that work against people, but when you can really understand your value, that keeps that tank high. So that when you have to ask for something, you don't have to do a lot of research around or pull up why you are valuable for that role. The other is being really aware, like in that example I gave about Mark not speaking up. Be really intentional in meetings, especially when you hold influence, that you can allow somebody's voice to be heard, to repeat what they said, to say, oh, wow, that was a great point. I want to restate that in the way I heard it. It's not taking it, it's helping people around understand it as well. How can you understand the value and the things that get in your head and really celebrate that value for you? And then how can you do it for others? How can you be a coach for somebody else? When somebody tells you that they are going to advocate for themselves and ask for more money, ask them if you can help them. Think through it. That will give you the optics to understand what are those barriers that get in the way. Can help you really see that for other people. And while you're helping them, you're helping you by understanding the power of that zooming out and looking at it from a lot of different perspectives. It's like when I look at something that's high stakes that is coming up for me, having that ability to go to the balcony and consider the best case scenario, and even saying like, if say this to somebody, what is impossible? What feels impossible in this scenario for you? And allow them to imagine what that could be. Think of the power that that gives somebody to allow themselves to think outside, and that gives them a little bit more room to then come a little bit down. That woman that was looking at it hourly, having her imagine something that was completely absurd might give her the words to be okay with the thing that's in the middle of those two. There's so much power in that. Something to consider about, and how can you be that person for somebody else to zoom out, see it from a different perspective, and really understand the value that you bring. It's great that we advocate so well for others. And what's great about it is that when we do that, it gives us the practice and it helps us see it in other people so that we can see it in ourselves. And we don't ever turn that down for ourselves. We may have that self-doubt. We may not feel our value, but the more that we can practice that, the more we can turn down that intensity of it and have some more objectivity, or be able to understand what we need to do. I always tell people to spend a lot of time preparing so you can be in aware, which is the second, so you can be really objective, so you have a plan. When you have a plan, you could even give that plan to yourself in the moments of, all right, I feel really triggered right now. I don't see my value. What resources do I need? Whether it's brainstorming yourself or really asking somebody from the outside to give you that lens, that zoom out, that perspective, so you can get what you want. Start really seeing this in every place that you can help someone else and be that advisor for them. And remember, that's great for them. It's also giving you the muscle that you need to be better at finding your own value and advocating for yourself. Really embrace the fact that we're better for other people because it's better for them and for you. I'll be right back. Hi, Susie here. You know, one of the things that I love is I facilitate team conversations, whether it's talking about high stakes, how to advocate for one another. So if you're a leader and you want to bring your team together, you want to level them up, help them really bond together and increase their confidence as a whole, contact me. Go to SusieTomachuck.com, tell me a little bit about your team, and I'll be in touch. When we adopt a negotiator mindset, it's allowing us to see negotiation all over the place and not just us against something else to get what we want. It's looking at high stakes situations and identifying them and saying, okay, this is high stakes for me. I need to move through this carefully. But it's also being aware of when somebody else is in a situation where they're not able to see their own value, whether it's around the board table, that's very old school, whether it's in the virtual room when you're meeting, be really present, especially if you hold the influence in that room. You owe it to the people around you. It's your responsibility to how do you help their voice be heard? How do you advocate for others? How can you help them find their value and amplify that in the moment when it's necessary for them to further their cause? That helps them create that confidence for themselves, those habits for themselves. But it also gives you a different view. It helps you understand the impact. When I talk to people all the time about this, I'm always learning. I'm always learning some different angle to help others see it. And I'm always learning. This is not something that just comes and goes, or it's something that you click in, you plug in, and then you always have. So I want you to think about when I think about a powerful question for you today, I want you to think about, when are you watering down your message? When do you feel that you understand and you've honed your value, but yet when you get in front of that other person, you use those words that aren't as bold, or you say it boldly, but then you say, but if you can't get that, I'm okay with that. What are you doing to water down your message? And then how are you helping others? Have you been taking a mindful approach around how can you amplify somebody else's voice? How can you help them understand their value? You are in a place where you have the objectivity that they need, so you can be that outside source to help them zoom out and see the entire table so that they can come up with their position. They can find a number that is more sound to their value, or even be able to get really clear about saying what their idea is in the moment. When you amplify that, they might be learning how to frame that better, or not be so apprehensive about letting their voice be heard. Think about you watering down your message. Are you doing that? Be an observer of you. And how are you stepping in and advocating for others? Because you should be doing with ease. I so appreciate you. I'm so glad you are here. I will talk more about this, an extended version of some additional tips of this in my newsletter. So head over to negotiationlove.com, join the weekly free email with some additional tips. I'd love to have you join the conversation there and be a part of that network as we all grow this muscle to adopt a negotiator mindset. So remember, negotiation is more than a skill. It truly is a mindset. And this is where you build it. Thanks for being here.